Welcome back to the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. In today's episode, I talked about a very important, frequently asked question that I get all the time across all of our social media platforms, which is how to overcome weight loss plateaus. And I provided 5 different reasons why it happens and 5 things you can do, actually more than five, as to how to address some of those plateaus. And perhaps you can start making adjustments and changes. Of course, like we could have an entire class for hours on many different changes you can make, but those are 5 things that you can start to address here today. Enjoy. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. I am delighted that you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about a really awesome topic, which is, well, it's not an awesome topic because if you're listening to this with eagerness and excitement because you're like, oh my God, finally, I'm going to get the answers to some of the questions or some of the struggles and frustrations that I currently have. Of course, obviously, that means you're struggling with this, but it's going to be a great episode, and hopefully you get really good answers out of it. Plateaus and weight loss plateaus. But before we get into that, I wanted to just kind of tell you some of the stuff that I've been going on lately. We're relaunching our blog, so we're going to have a lot of really great content in there where you can go and read if you prefer to consume information and content and a form that you can read through. So that's going to be launching pretty soon. But besides that, I wanted to also invite you to check out our private Facebook community, which is actually rapidly growing. So if you're not part of it yet, this is where I do most of my most amazing content, honestly. I go in, I do lives every single week. We do challenges and we do all kinds of different supportive posts to help you really accomplish your goals. And honestly, even people that just are in there have posted incredible, amazing things, whether transformations, improvements in their relationship with food, and all kinds of different things like that without even being clients into our program, which leads to the last thing I wanted to mention today, which is our one-on-one coaching program is currently accepting new clients, and we're super pumped to possibly have you on our team. So if you are new here and you never listened to my podcast and somebody just invited you, I am a registered dietitian and nutrition coach, and I own a company called Planos that essentially what it does is it helps people build a lifelong nutrition and lifestyle blueprint, which is all about like looking at your nutrition, revamping it, and making sure that we adjust it according to whatever goals you're trying to reach, but not only in the short term, but also in the long term. So if you're ready to do this and you're like, I need a coach, I need somebody to help me walk through this entire process and really kind of give me all the details and everything that I really need to know about this entire thing, I want to make sure that you go into our show notes right now and click on the link to apply for our program, or just simply send me a DM. I'd love to kind of jump on a call with you and chat a bit more about what we do and how we can help and support your health and fitness goals. So let's get right into it, shall we? I'm going to try to keep the episode today, nice and concise. We're going to be kind of covering weight loss plateaus today. But before we get into that, honestly, why it happens, we need to first establish definitions. And to me, the way I define a weight loss plateau, it's simply a period of time in which the stimulus into what you're trying to, or the stimulus of in your diet or the changes that you made in your diet that were effective to help you lose weight and help you lose fat are not effective anymore, even though you have not changed one thing. And when I say even you have not changed one thing, I'm going to make sure that you take that with a grain of salt, because a lot of times that seems to be the problem, that you think you haven't, but you have. But then we're going to get into that in just a minute. But simply a weight loss plateau is, when you look at a curve, it's like, okay, it's like a straight line coming down, and then eventually just kind of like flattens a lot. And it happens with many, many different people, regardless of how they decide to do or how they decide to lose weight. And it's my job as a coach and a registered dietitian to help understand why is it happening and how we can actually break through that, which is something that happens very often. And I'm sure if you're listening to this episode and you are probably wondering or maybe thinking like, yeah, that's happened to me in the past, maybe that's happening to me right now, or now that that's not for me. I always like lose weight like a rock star, lose fat like a rock star, and I don't really need this kind of like support. But the reality is, like, many people struggle with it. And I figure, and I get this all the time. And it literally, like, I go on TikTok and a lot of the comment sections are people saying, like, I don't understand. I'm eating 1,400 calories and I am working out and I'm doing all these different things. And I lost like 50 pounds and I can't really seem to kind of get beyond that. So it's common. It's something that happens all the time, but we have to really like, and most people think that it's just their nutrition or their exercise, but the reality is a multifactorial process that kind of goes in really what weight loss is. And weight loss is not rocket science in order for it to happen, but there are a lot of important considerations as to how to do it the right way. So why do weight loss plateaus happen? It's typically because, well, there's a few different reasons for it. And I'm going to try to break them down into the nutritional considerations, movement and exercise, and then other kinds of factors I'm going to break down as well, because most people think, as I said, that it's just simply, well, like my body's just simply not responding. I'm eating too little or whatever. Like, but there's really a lot of like different kind of situations here that I'm going to unfold today to help you possibly get you to change something to perhaps help you break through some of those plateaus. So why do they happen? Like, why do we stop losing weight when we were supposedly doing all the right things? There's different scientific explanations for it, actually. One of them is your body. I always say this to all of our clients. It's not like evolution didn't set it up for it to lose weight, because your body likes balance. It likes homeostasis. It's the right sciencey word, which homeostasis means just balance. It likes to stay in a comfortable position. So whenever you, and what does that mean for you? For example, when a comfortable position is when your body has enough energy to do everything that it needs to support the energy expenditure, which it's all that means is the amount of like calories your body's using on a daily basis through movement and thinking and exercise and walking and fidgeting. All these different things consume calories. So your body's job is to make sure that the energy matches that so it can be happy, right? So it has everything that it needs. So whenever there's not enough energy, what typically tends to happen is that there is an energy lag or an energy deficit, and your body kind of sound alarms and figure out like, holy crap, like there's not enough energy to meet the needs of our body. Let's actually switch gears and figure out where we're going to be able to get this energy from. And that's usually when your body accesses, fat storage, or just storage of not just fat, but also carbohydrate storage to provide that energy deficit or that energy like lag that is kind of that's being created because you didn't really give it enough food to really meet the energy requirements of your body. So it doesn't like to feel that way. So I always say people that your body doesn't like to lose weight. It likes to stay comfortable where it's at. So when you start in a journey of weight loss and you do any kind of diet, the first thing that those diets create, regardless of what they are, it's a massive energy deficit. So your body tries to figure it out. Okay, like it happens once, but as it happens like consistently, the first thing that happens is eventually your weight or fat is going to start to drop, because your body's like constantly going for those energy storage sites. And that's exactly how fat loss happens. But eventually your body's going to adapt because it keeps doing it over and over and over again. But there's this concept known as metabolic adaptation, in which your body reduces its energy requirements to match that of to stay like balanced. So if you were consuming 3,000 calories and now you bring it down to 2,000 calories, right? And you start to lose weight because of that. Or maybe for a female, it's like 2,500 calories. It was like where at their, not their worst, but like when they were like, a point where they were like, they thought they needed really to wanted to lose weight, and they start now consuming 1,800 calories, there's an energy deficit. Now, eventually you start to lose weight, your body's going to get adjusted to that new kind of energy deficit. And that's what most people do. And it gets to a point where like now 1800 calories, they turn into like the maintenance level. So maintenance just simply means is the amount of requirements or calories your body simply needs to just stay exactly where it's at. So that metabolic, that adaptation phase can take a while. And this is where you're noticing like your weight continues to drop or fat continues to drop. And I use like terms such as fat loss and weight loss a little bit different, because not every single person achieves weight loss. Like some people achieve fat loss, yet they still accomplish what we call a body recomposition, in which your body changes by increasing lean mass at the same time as losing a little bit of body fat. So like the net weight actually doesn't change too much. But that's one thing that typically happens. Now, that is in the ideal world in which you are a perfect human that consumes exactly those 1800 calories daily, not 1 calorie more or less, or probably stays around that kind of like ballpark, right? So if that would be the case and you started to notice that there is like a plateau, your body's really not responding, then this is obviously when there's nutritional considerations and nutritional changes that can be made. But that's not the only factor, and we're going to look into different ones. But that's something that sometimes happens. The reality, though, is that many people think that they're still consuming 1800 calories, but the truth is losing weight is not easy. It can be, but it's definitely tough because your body's like going against it. Like hunger levels are going to go up and all these different things that happen. So after 4 to 5 months, maybe your level of motivation is not the same. So even though you are still consuming quote unquote the 1800 calories that you normally consume, and when I say like a quote unquote, is because, well, perhaps you're forgetting the smaller details, and the weekends are kind of getting away from you, and like you're eating out more often, and perhaps, and then one reason why sometimes plateaus happen, here goes, is you may be eating more than what you think. And this happens all the time, and I know this because it happens to me as well. We go through different stages throughout the year, and our motivation to continuously drop weight 365 days a year is not only not recommended, but it's also very hard to sustain. So I like to believe in, or like to kind of preach the whole concept of seasons of the year in which you're focused on one thing versus the other. So the people that are constantly trying to lose weight, like left and right, every single month, every single week, every single month, like a lot of times it just becomes difficult. It becomes hard and requires motivation and grit and consistency. And sometimes that consistency is broken, even though you're just not always not noticing it. So that sometimes happens in the case that the metabolic adaptation type of thing is not really the case there. So that is like something that a lot of times like we don't necessarily pay too much attention to. So here is the solution for that. If that was one thing you were addressing, if like we're going to break it down into two things. If you are sitting in there and listening to this podcast and thinking, no, it's been 5 months. I literally track every single ounce of food. I am super consistent. I promise you, Andres, I'm not doing anything extra that I'm not kind of going on unaccounted for. That perhaps the solution in that case is not to continue to either drop calories if it's already too low, but rather maybe go through, and I can do an entire podcast separated out on this, but there's previous episodes I've done on this, a reverse dieting approach in which the goal is not to lose weight or lose fat. The goal is just simply to rebuild your body's metabolism back up to a point where it can be responsive to an energy deficit again. So how do you do that? A lot of times is like, understanding exactly where you're at. And then may say you're a woman and you kind of got down to like the 1300, 1400 calories. And this is when you're still noticing that you're really kind of like, experiencing that plateau. Instead of going down, perhaps it's starting to kind of go up to your maintenance levels, which could be anywhere between 18 to 2200 calories. And just simply do that in a very consistent manner, like maybe 100 calories every week if you're tracking calories and macronutrients. And that could be a really good possibility to the point that you kind of get to like a nice little baseline and maintenance, and then tracking your weight and your body composition every so often to figure out exactly where you're at. Now, if that is not the case, And let's say, for example, like, well, I don't really know, maybe like, yeah, you're right, Andres, maybe there's a little bit of inconsistencies here and there, then perhaps the goal would be simply to really pay attention to the smaller details. So pay attention, like, really like make it an effort and a priority for this week to say, I'm going to just like gonna track every single thing I'm eating. And then you may realize like, wow, like I was eating almost closer to 300 calories more. Here's how I notice this all the time. Like if you were like, no, I'm super good with my diet, and maybe you're a person that already lost a lot of weight, you're already in a lean kind of stage and you're not really paying attention to those details. Like when we go in like and say, for example, like a tablespoon of peanut butter for many people means different things. So maybe that tablespoon to you actually is 2 tablespoons because you're not really taking the time to measure it out appropriately. Again, this is not for everybody, but I'm just talking about people that are really trying to understand what's going on. And if that's the case, we're talking about 100 calories extra that I'm going unaccounted for. And that, when you multiply that times 7, that's 700 calories from just that one little detail. And there's a lot of things that may be happening on a daily basis, just like that, that may be explaining why you're doing that. So, sorry, my dog started like barking like crazy. So those are some of the most important things that really could represent a big kind of like change. So those are when we kind of start to think from like the perspective of nutrition specific. So that's the part of it that I kind of wanted to explain a little bit more in detail. Now, the second, the kind of like beyond the plate considerations here, now we can kind of move into exercise and movement and training. And this can be a little complicated because, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. So a second big reason in which sometimes it's not really nutrition but the movement and exercise and how many calories you're expending through just simple activity on a daily basis could be the case of your plateau is many different things. For example, when you go back to like the pandemic times, like people started to complain like I'm gaining weight and all those different things. So why is it happening? Well, you went from working in an office where you would park your car in a building and then you would walk all the way to there, and then like you would go walk to this place and walk to there, and like you were more active. And now you're at home, and then the longest distance that you travel is probably like 20 feet over to your kitchen. We live in a house, but it's not that big, and it's literally about 20 to 30 feet to the kitchen. So you may not be as active as you think you are, and because of that reason your calorie expenditure has lowered, and because of that you're not creating the energy deficit anymore. So the solution for that is like really audit what you're doing and perhaps start to increase your movement. I'm a big fan of not really getting people to eat too little, but rather to move a lot more. So getting your 10,000 steps every single day, it's a really good place to start. Perhaps adding a little bit of extra like movement in the morning. Like if you do like, gym training or like, resistance training at the gym, perhaps is maybe adding, something in the morning that you can do, maybe some biking, some walking, some smaller things like that sometimes make a big difference. Now, as important as it is movement, there's actually the opposite effect for many people that are working out way too much. And I'm going to talk about the third kind of like thing that sometimes like really affects people's kind of like goals in here, which is stress. But, we'll get into that in a minute. But a lot of times when people are training way too much, it's a very stressful situation for the body. And then instead of like working with you, they're kind of creating resistance because your body has like chronic inflammation, it's not recovering the right way. And this happens to many people. We work with a lot of people that do CrossFit, and perhaps it's not necessarily that they don't move enough, but it's simply the fact that they're just not giving their body enough rest. Rest is as important as exercise, especially for people that are advanced and they train a lot more consistently. And their problem is not that they don't really get out there enough, but or to work out, but rather it's like they're just trying to kind of get to the next level. And sometimes like for them, it's like more is better, when that's not always the reality. So when it comes down to movement and training and exercise, it's really important to understand where you're at and what do you need to possibly change, whether it's like increasing movement and exercise and activity, or rather like decreasing it. When we get more into like the specific details, it also depends on the type of training. High intensity training, for example, maybe it's like only like 30 minutes to an hour a day, but perhaps the rest of the day you're just sitting down on a chair. So, well, but I work out, Andres. Yes, you're working out for 30 to 60 minutes, but the reality is that you're not really as active as you may think you are. So that's something else that typically happens to many different people. So So it's just like thinking, a little bit more just from the beyond the just the food perspective. The third thing, so we talked about nutrition first, and then a couple of different things that could be happening. We talked about like exercise, movement, and so forth. The third thing that could be happening here could be stress. Stress, I always like tell a lot of my clients, is the silent killer of your progress. Why? Because stress, it's a real thing. Chronic stress, it's even worse. Acute stress, like this is, let's just kind of define the differences between acute and chronic stress. Acute stress is whenever you have, let's say, for example, you sprain your ankle, God forbid it happens. What happens in the site of the ankle, like sprain that you got, is inflammation. And that inflammation is a natural response from your body to try to like bring as many like helpers and fixers to go and repair the damage that was done. That's why you swell up, because there's just a lot more fluid in that kind of area, just to protect your area from kind of getting more hurt. That's literally why inflammation happens. So that's an acute stress response. A chronic stress response is one that is everlasting, that is ongoing all the time. And the reality is that we live in a society that chronic stress is eaten for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So what does that mean? You're constantly exposed to like stimulus that cause stress to go up, whether it is like timelines at work, or nasty comments and people that you will find on the internet, or like road raging, because I think I'm here to blame for that, but like road raging because somebody caught you off, or you had an argument with your spouse, or your kids are making you crazy. There are so many different things that are causing your stress levels to stress alarms to go up, and then that creates a lot of metabolic changes inside of your body that really like get you, or it puts you in a spot that your body doesn't really like to change. It's trying to simply protect itself. The way I explain it, and I did it on a simple meditation and deep breath work video I did recently on our social media, is that imagine you have a tiger that is like walking inside of your room. What would you do? Like your body has like this thing called fight or flight response, and it's either to get ready to fight or get ready to flight or just take off, right? And it changes a lot of different things in your body to try to preserve energy and then like use it effectively just so you can take off, or that you can kind of fight the tiger, right? So imagine that you have multiple tigers walking inside of your room every single day and scaring the crap out of you, right? Like it creates so much stress, and those stimulus a lot of times create a lot of resistance. So chronic stress can lead to things such as chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, and all these different things that are going to be like things that get in the way of you achieving your goals. And this goes for the people that are like, no, Andres, I track my nutrition. I'm resting, I'm moving enough, but then like their life stress are just simply like skyrocketing all the time, because like something happened in their family, they're going through a really tough financial situation, or you name it. It's difficult. But it's a lot of times is the main reason why a lot of these different things could be happening. So stress comes in different like flavors. And when it comes down to training and physical stress, which is from like beating your body up every single day. Let's say, for example, you're doing high intensity training, you need to allow your body to rest and recover, because similar to that sprained ankle that I talked about earlier, every time that you kind of pushing your body a lot in like really intense exercises, you're like hurting your muscles, and those muscles need enough time to recover and to really replenish energy, and just to simply to repair themselves. And a lot of times we're not giving enough time for your body to be able to do those things. So that's number 3. So stress. Fourth is going to be sleep. Believe it or not, sleep is a massive issue. I recently read a book, and I actually watched a masterclass by Dr. Matthew Walker. He is and I did a podcast on this, I believe, he's an expert on sleep. And he talks about how the human body, when it doesn't get enough sleep, it does all kinds of different things, not only from the hormonal standpoint, but also from the behavioral standpoint. What does that mean? Like in studies that they looked at people that get only 4 to 5 hours of sleep versus people that get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, they find that the people that get really limited amount of hours, they tend to consume or overconsume more calories than the people that get plenty of sleep. The same humans, like the same people, they're put through different kind of circumstances, and they're given allowance to eat, on a daily basis, and they consume almost like 300 to 500 calories more on average compared to when they get enough sleep. At the same time, they're more inclined to eat things that are going to be more emotionally satisfying, such as sweets and very energy or nutrient deprived like food sources, such as like sugars and refined carbohydrates, and like items like that, like baked goods and all these different things that really like sound alarms in your brain that are really going to make you happy. So that maybe the fact that you're actually creating a lot of like lack of sleep, you're maybe eating more, which is probably kind of leading you to think that, well, I'm doing all the right things, but reality is that maybe you may be eating more. So it could be all connected. So one thing you can do here, and I didn't really kind of talk about like a couple of strategies for stress management, but for stress management, some of the things that I love to do include meditative practice and deep breath work, particularly deep breath work when you're experiencing like stressful moments in your day. So they can take a step back, taking a deep breath and letting it out, because those things like that really kind of calm your system down a little bit. So those are some things that really kind of help. And at the same time, it's like, well, it depends. Like, practicing like journaling, or some people are like managing their stress is actually going on a walk or exercising, if that's not something you're doing. Everybody has different coping mechanisms for stress management, but having some is really the key here. For sleep, it's just simply a matter of making sure you're creating routines around your sleep. Trying to go to bed at the same time every night, trying to wake up around the same time. I'm by no means perfect at that, and I'm one of those people that I'm part of that group of people that don't get enough sleep every single night. But it makes such a big difference into really what you're doing daily and how your body may be kind of like responding. So, and the last one that I wanted to kind of address here is going to be hormones. Are hormones to blame for your like lack of result and like your plateauing? They could, but it really depends on many different factors that I don't really have a lot of time to kind of cover here today. But if you have lost weight on your own and you hit a plateau, it was most likely, or your current plateau may not be likely related to hormones, unless the way to achieve your goals or to like really lose weight require you to actually chronically restrict your calories to like dangerously low levels, like anywhere below 1200 calories, mainly because your body will like adjust a lot of different things. And like your thyroid regulates your metabolism, so it may have changed, and maybe you may have developed like some sort of like thyroid imbalances and things like that. So sometimes hormones can be to blame, but it's less likely. It's a lot less common than you may think, particularly when we're not really kind of paying attention to like the other four things that I just kind of mentioned here today. And also particularly if it happens to somebody that, hey, you did, you restricted calories, you accomplished his goals, you lost a lot of weight, and there's not really any kind of like hormonal issues, and now you think they may be kind of developing, it could be a possibility, but it's only in extreme cases like that. But if it's just more of like, yeah, I went from like 2,500 calories now to eating 1,800 calories, and I started to kind of plateau, and then maybe I'll drop it down to 1,600 and still kind of experience that consistently, then perhaps you need to kind of address the number 1, 2, 3, and 4 items that I talked about today, instead of like thinking, oh yeah, like I have a hormonal problem. But if obviously you're interested, or you're like wondering, oh, like what can I do? Is there's actually something like that, you can always consult like with your doctor, or maybe like look into something like a Dutch test or something like that to help you understand if your hormones are balanced, and if that's something that you may need to look into. And just to kind of like finish up here, guys, like, the reality is that plateaus are very normal things for that to happen, but you can avoid them. And we do that in our in our coaching programs, like in many different ways. For people that are in a lean level and they're just trying to get to the next level, or they're just really lean individuals, and I talk about this all the time, it's like, well, you have to maybe like turn up the dial in effort and consistency that you may not be doing right now. So it's like auditing and figure it out, like, okay, what are your goals? What are you willing to do for that, while still maintaining a certain level of flexibility and consistency, yet you're not really kind of hurting yourself in the process, or you're kind of like hurting your goals, because like There's some things that you're just not really paying attention. We're human and we're not perfect machines. So a lot of times it's that same fact that really kind of creates those like weight loss plateaus that we may be experiencing. But there are ways to kind of overcome them. But here's the one thing I'm going to tell you. It requires a buttload of patience. And if you don't have the patience, then a lot of times you're going to revolt to like extreme methods, or you're going to find the next big diet. And that cycling of dieting really leads to bigger things. I have a client who gave birth to her second child and is taking an entire year to lose the weight that she kind of gained through her second pregnancy. Now, but she never gave up. She continued to push forward. She continued to do things. And now when I started to compare photos today, I'm like, wow, it took almost a year to get to this point, but she never gave up. She maintained the consistency, and this would kind of like yields the results. And that's not what people want to listen to, but this is the truth, it's the reality, guys. And that's something that you have to really kind of drill into your brain. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But then I'll tell you, like, you can run that marathon at a faster pace if you wanted to, but it requires a lot bigger commitment. And you have to ask yourself, like, how consistent can I stay at this level of effort? Like, how much am I willing to actually give up in order for me to maintain this kind of like level of results and this level of goals? That is like the reality here that we have to address. And that's the main thing that we have to really consider here to understand what kind of changes we need to be making. This is something that I have noticed, like after having coached like over 500 people, that a lot of times, and it's crazy because a lot of times I have worked with clients that are not fully motivated to reach their goals. They just think like, when they come to see me as a nutrition coach, I'm going to give them the formula, all the success. Like, okay, now I'm working with them, so I don't have to do anything else. But the reality is like they're wrong, because they have to do a lot of effort. And I know this, and I'm telling you that a lot of these people are not they're blaming a lot of different things into their life for the lack of results, because when they leave the program, sometimes maybe unsuccessfully because they didn't really put the effort and all these different things like that. I talked to them, months after, maybe like a couple years after, and then they accomplished insane results. And it's like, how long did it take you to do this? And I was like, oh, 3 months, 4 months. What did you do? Actually, nothing. I just like pay a lot of attention to what you told me, practice portion control. Like, I did all these different things. It's like, what was different? And it's like, I understood the importance of commitment, consistency, and effort into what I really needed to do. And that happens very often. So if you're sitting in there frustrated and wondering, why am I not really seeing the results that I'm seeing right now? First off, you're most likely not broken. So don't think that you are. But second of all, like, when you put things into like a balance and figure it out, okay, like, are my efforts into what I'm trying to accomplish outweighing the comfort of, or maybe like the things that I'm maybe not doing right now? Like, am I doing more than really like that is going to kind of drive me to the goals that I'm trying to get? Because if you're not, there's work to do. And the other part too is like, and it's not just about doing it 1 week or 1 day, sometimes even not 1 month. It's consistently working through this, and that is freaking hard, but it's what it takes. So a lot of times when people tell me like I'm just not motivated and stuff like that, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing this in the first place? But I'm not going to get too much into like the psychological part of this, or like the mindset type of things. We'll leave that conversation for a different time. But hopefully this is helpful. And if it's not, or maybe you will have more questions about it, I would love to have a conversation with you. And the best way to do that, it's either by joining our private Facebook community, which you're going to find a link on the show notes, or reaching out to me via Instagram or Facebook as a PM or direct message. And I'll be more than happy to start having a conversation to figure it out how we can actually help you get through some of those plateaus that you may be experiencing. So that's all I have for this week. It was a solo episode, but hopefully one packed with value and helpful information to help you continue to reach your goals. I will see you guys on the next one. And thank you once again for tuning in the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. Until the next one.